Okay? So, Yahuwah gave a name. Some people take this scripture. Some people go to the scripture and say, see, it doesn't matter what you call him right now because we're gonna be given a name. The scripture say he has a name that no man knows. Okay? So it doesn't matter what we call him right now. Is that true according to scripture? No, it's not true. It's heresy according to the scriptures. You see? Listen, the word forever in the scriptures get a whole lot of people in trouble. The word that is translated forever get a whole lot of people in trouble concerning a whole lot of different things that they say and teach. We are given a name that we are to call him by, and associated with it is the word forever. The word forever, when you see the word forever, please always remember this, that forever means you do this or this thing remains in effect until something changes. When you see the word forever, it means that this thing, whatever is associated with the word forever, it remains in effect until something changes. The name of Yahuwah and the name Yahusha remains in effect until we are given a name that has never been revealed to any man before. When the scriptures tells us that his name is Yahuwah, his name is Yahusha forever, what it's saying, that is his name until a name that has never been revealed to mankind is revealed. Very important to keep that in mind. Okay? People do it with a whole lot of stuff and don't see how they contradict themselves when they say other stuff. When we talk about zit, they do it with zit. When we talk, there are a lot of different things that people do it with, and they don't see how they're contradicting themselves and contradicting the scriptures. You see, we can't bury our head in the sand. You know, we can't hold on to something so tightly and dearly that we can't receive anything else. You know, my wife was trying to give Caleb something the other day. What was it, babe? What were you trying to give Caleb the other day? No, not medicine. Remember, you was trying to give him something, and he wanted what it was that you were trying to give him, but he had something else in his hand. And in order to get what he so desperately wanted from my wife, he needed to open up his hand and let go what he already has in his hand so that he can get what he really wants from her. But he wasn't trying to open up his hand to let go what he has to get what he wants, what he needs. You see? So he found himself in a dilemma. Here it is, I have something, but I see something else that I really want, even more than what I have. It's more beneficial than what I have. But I don't want to let go of what I have in order to get what I need. You see? Yes. Wrestling with the messenger. You know? And that's what people do. They hold on to something so tightly. and they just can't let go to receive what they really need. You see? They just can't let go to receive what they really need. You know, and kill them dead, they won't let it go. You see? Yeah, he found himself in a pickle. Yes.
You allow kids, they can.
Yeah, you know, my wife said if we allow kids, they can truly teach us a lot about ourselves. You know? So, but you know, I found that very interesting. I sat there and I watched him. He wanted what she had to give him, but he didn't want to let go of what he had in his hand. Somehow he couldn't put it together that, you know what, if I just let go of this, then I can really get that. He couldn't put it together. You have grown people like that. You see. Absolutely.
I shouldn't say if we allow him, but if we observe him closely.
Mm-hmm. Yep, if we observe them, my wife said. Okay. All right. So let me go on here. Where was I at? And okay. Verse 12, and his eyes, Chazun, Revelation 19, verse 12, and his eyes were as flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, having a name that had been written, which no one had perceived except himself. And having been dressed in a robe dipped in blood, yep, that's the sacrifice, and having been dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name called the Word of Yahuwah. What was his name called? This is Yahusha, Mashiach. His name called the Word of Yahuwah. And what is the Word of Yahuwah? The Word of Yahuwah is Yahuwah. Now there are some people that teaches that there are two Yahuwahs. You have the Word of Yahuwah and then you have Yahuwah. No, the Word of Yahuwah is Yahuwah. Just read the text. Read the scriptures. It tells us. Okay? And having, okay, so now, and the armies in Shamayim, dressed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, and that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall shepherd them with a rod of iron, and he treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Al Shaddai, and on his robe, and this word is not right, is where they use the word thigh. That's not correct offhand. His name was not written on his thigh. That would be a tattoo. Okay, the word that was used, that was transcribed, obviously was an error in the transcription. The word is very close to the word for thigh, the Abri word. That's how we know too that the book of Revelation was actually written in Hebrew, even though they tell you it was written in Greek, but then there's the book was written in Abri, okay? But it was not written on his thigh, okay? It was written on his vesture, okay? In his vesture, he has a name written, Sovereign of Sovereigns and Master of Masters. And I saw one messenger standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the birds that fly in the midst of Shamayim, come and gather together for the supper of the great Elohim. Come and gather together for the supper of the great Elohim, to eat the flesh of sovereigns, and the flesh of commanders, and the flesh of strong ones, and the flesh of horses, and of those who sit on them, and the flesh of all people, free and slave, both small and great. I saw the beast and the sovereigns of the earth, and their armies gathered together to fight him who sat on the horse and his army. And the beast was seized, and with him the false prophet. We talked about the beast and the false prophet. They represent two nations. With him the false prophet. Christianity teaches that these are two men, not so. With him the false prophet ceased. With him the false prophet who worked signs in his presence, by which he led astray those who received the mark of the beast And those who worshipped his image, what is the image of the beast? That Jesus, that picture. That's the image of the beast. The two were thrown alive into the lake of fire, burning with sulfur, and the rest were killed with the sword, which came from the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh. The destruction of Babylon. That's the destruction of Babylon. Okay, but the beginning of that chapter is dealing with the bridegroom coming back for his bride and the consummation of the marriage. Okay? The marriage feast. All right. Now, I want to go back to Philippians, and then we're going to go back to Romans. And family, we only got to verse 3, and we have been here for almost 2 hours. And we only got to verse 3 of chapter 1. There are some places where we won't be this long, but there are some places where we'll find ourselves having to deal with some stuff because of everything that is out there and have been said. And so some places will be longer than others. Okay? Nonetheless, praise Yahuwah to the so we go back to Philippians chapter 2, verse 7. Yes, it does, Aki. But emptied himself, taking the form of a servant. So he came in the form of man, and came to be in the likeness of men. So taking the form of a servant means that he comes to be in the likeness of men. That's what that means. And that's what that phrase in Romans chapter 1 and verse 3, according to the flesh, that's what it means. To be in the likeness of men. Okay? To be in the similitude of men. Okay? That's what that means. Not what they say it means, but that's what it means. To be in the likeness of a man. Okay? Came to be in the likeness of a man. That's what it means. Okay. So, verse 8. And having been found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even on a stake or a tree. Okay? Now, verse 9. Elohim, therefore, has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name. Now, Elohim has highly exalted him, given him a name which is above every name. So, if Yahusha is Yahuwah, why does Elohim need to exalt him? Well, just back up. Remember, he emptied himself, came in the likeness of a man. So, if he emptied himself, then his existence in the heavens, which is his fullness, and it's not Godhead, that word don't exist. That's a Christian induction or introduction into the text. Godhead does not have anything to do with Yahuwah. Okay? His fullness. The Abri word that is used for his fullness is Adonai. Sovereign. Sovereign. Okay? Godhead has nothing to do with him. Okay? That's a pagan inference. Now, so Elohim therefore has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name. Now, this is a quote. This is a quote from the scriptures. Okay? This is Shaul quoting the scriptures. Okay? Now, this quote is taken from Yeshayahu, if I recall properly, chapter 42. Now, at this point, I'm going to ask the question. I guess I'll ask the question. Of all the writers, all the people that write the epistles and Bashura, of all the renewed covenant writings, of all the writers, who quotes Torah and all of Scripture, you know, I keep saying Torah but really, I like to refer to all of Scripture as Torah, but I say it just for the sake of, you know, I don't want to be misunderstood either. But of all the people that write in the renewed covenant, who quotes the Scriptures the most? Of all the writers, the Apostle Shaul. Actually, well, take Yahusha did not write, so he was written off, but he never wrote. So Yahusha never wrote of himself. But of all the writers, you see, of all the writers, Shaul quotes the Scriptures more than anyone else. Now, what's interesting, when I was attending seminary, they are quick to point out, because you see, Christianity has taken Shaul and made him. Christianity has taken Shaul, taken his writings and twisted them, and have sought to make him their mouthpiece for their lawlessness. Okay? I think we're already seeing evidence of how they do that. The way they twist the translations. So right here in Philippians, you see verse 5 and verse 6. If you look at translation, they do not agree. In the translation in Philippians chapter 2, verse 5 and 6 does not agree. You see? But as long as we are blinded to their devices, we will not recognize that. Now, this is just a tiny example. There are many more examples. Okay? We see that how they use the word but. We see how they use the word in to twist the truth. But of all the people, so while I was in cemetery, they taught me that Shaul actually quotes from Torah and the rest of the Scriptures over 1,000 times indirectly, and some say you'll have some people that say over 90 times directly, some say over 125 times directly, and you have all kinds of numbers. Well, as many as they tell you, the number is far greater. As many as they tell you, the number is far greater. Shaul quotes Torah more than any other writer. And when he quotes it contextually. People rip it out of context, twist it. Okay, now I'm going to give you a link. It's a Christian link. Okay, it's a Christian link, but it's going to compare quotes of Shaul. You can bookmark this, please. We're going to go back to it in time as we continue. But it's going to give you quotes of Shaul taken that where he quote from the Scriptures, from Torah. Okay? So let me post that link. If you could bookmark it. And as we continue in our study, we will refer to it from time to time. Okay? But you can take a look at that. Now, as many as they have listed there, the number is still greater than that. Okay? As many as they have listed there, the number is greater. Okay? Now, here in Philippians chapter 2 and verse 9, where he says, Elohim therefore has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name. That's a quote from the book of Yeshayahu. Now, what's interesting about this quote is when you go to the book of Yeshayahu, you know what Yeshayahu tells you? That the one that have been highly exalted and given a name above every name, that one is Yahuwah. The book of Yeshayahu tells you that explicitly, unwaveringly, that the one that was highly exalted and given a name above every name is Yahuwah. So what does that tell us about Yahusha? It again is just another piece of evidence that tells us that Yahusha is Yahuwah. So when Shaul here quote the prophet Yeshayahu, and said that he would be given a name above every name. And when you go to Yahuwah, you see that Yahuwah says that the one that will be exalted and given a name above every name is Yahuwah. Then you see that what Shaul is saying is that Yahusha is Yahuwah. Okay? That's what Yahusha says all the way throughout. But yet Christians twist the writings of Shaul to suggest that Shaul support some doctrine called the Trinity. Okay? They twist his writings to suggest that Shaul supports some doctrine called the Trinity. Now, I'm going to go to one more reference very quickly to show you that he did not. And there are many references that we can go to. So you see, a couple things as we examine Shaul. Number one, those who speak against Shaul, they say Shaul was a Christian. If he's a Christian, then he must support the doctrine of the Trinity. You can't call yourself a Christian and denounce the doctrine of the Trinity, because the doctrine of the Trinity is inherently Christian. You see, you cannot call yourself a Christian and not support the doctrine of the Trinity. So what did they do? They twist his writings to make it seem as if Shaul proclaimed the doctrine called the Trinitarian doctrine. Okay? But I'm going to go, there are many places that we can go, and eventually we will get to them, but I'm going to go to one today. But before I go there, let me finish here in Philippians, because even here in Philippians, he's letting you know that that's not the case. Okay? Well, you see, the thing is, Akut, that what these people have done is they have come up with the two Shaul doctrine. Okay? But they use a verse in Acts chapter 13, speaking of this man Paulos, and then build a doctrine unsupported by Scripture to say that he is the writer of these books. Okay? That doctrine is unsupported by Scripture, but they say that he is the writer of these books. Okay? This old Paulos thing, he didn't write these books. The suggestion is that he is the writer of these books. Okay? The gentleman that's mentioned in Acts chapter 13 and verse 7 or whatever it is, he's not the writer of the books. But that's what that teaching says, that he is the writer of the books. And that's why we're examining the writings of Shaul. That's called the two, and listen, the only person that I know that is teaching that is that gentleman who also teach the two Yahuwah doctrine. That's it, Yakaziel. Okay? He teaches there are two Shahuls. He teaches there are two Yahuwahs. He teaches that a woman's locks, that women should grow locks, and that is their covering. And none of those three line up with Scripture. None of them. None of those three line up with the Scriptures. Okay? They just do not. He has a teaching. I don't know if he has changed this one. But before he started teaching that there are two Shahuls, he was teaching that Shaul was a false prophet, a false teacher, before he turned to two Shahuls. There's a gentleman that was coming to this room from his room when he was teaching that, and he came over here with it. But before he started teaching that, he was teaching that Shaul was a false teacher. Then he changed from that and he said, well, there are two Shahuls, but the real Shaul don't write much. The majority of the writings come from Paulos. Okay? So that's when he switched to that. But initially that's where he started. He had a teaching that says that, now we know that we cannot, according to the Scriptures, and if there's somebody in the room that is not familiar with this, don't just say, oh, he's talking foolishness. But either search it out or, desire to search it out. If you want to ask me or if you want to go and search it out, but don't just write it off. But we know according to the scriptures, that we are not in a position to keep the feast. Okay, we're not. But I did see a video where this gentleman was teaching. He said you should keep the feast, but you should not eat any lamb. There's no need to eat any lamb because Yahusha is the lamb. Okay? But keep the feast, just don't eat the lamb. Now, there's no instructions in the scriptures that says that. And there's also no instructions in the scriptures telling us to keep the feast in the place of our captivity. Okay? So, you know, we really have to examine everything, because there are too many theories floating around. And do not take anything from me if I can't show it to you in the scriptures. And it must make scriptural sense. Should not just make sense to me. It must line up with the scriptures. You see? The contextual scripture. And also, you must be cut to be saved, and things like that. Now, circumcision is not done away, but the scriptures have and does teach against those who teach that if you're not circumcised, you're not going, you won't be accepted. Because if circumcision takes precedence over the sacrifice of the lamb, then you are in error. And so what you're saying is, forget Yahusha. You need to save yourself. And that's not new. It's been around. Okay? It's not new. It's been around. Having been found in fashion, verse 8, I'm in Philippians chapter 2. And having been found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, death even of a tree. Elohim therefore has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name, that at the name of Yahushua every knee shall bow, of those in Shamayim and those on earth, and of those under the earth. When we bow to Yahusha, who are we bowing to? We are bowing to Yahuwah. You see, Yahu, the Shah simply speaks of what Yahuwah would come to do. Yahuwah would come to save. You see? So when we bow to Yahusha, we are really bowing to Yahuwah. Okay? Yahusha doesn't mean that it's somebody totally different from Yahuwah. Okay? And every tongue should confess, verse 11, that Yahushua HaMashiach is sovereign to the esteem of Elohim the Father. Okay? So, when we esteem Yahushua, we are actually esteeming Elohim the Father. That's what it's saying. When we esteem Yahusha, we are esteeming Yahuwah in his full, the Father. So that, my beloved, as you always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much rather in my absence. I won't go into that part. Okay, now I want to go to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. We want to see if Shaul supports the Trinity doctrine. Okay? Because his words have been twisted to say he does. Well, we were just reading in Philippians, and it shows that he doesn't. But let's go to another place. Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 1. Okay, baby. For I do not wish you to be ignorant, brothers, that all our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea. All our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea. What does the cloud represent, family? Here in where Shaul here is speaking about the cloud. What does this cloud represent? What cloud were they under? All our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea. What does the cloud here represent? What did it represent? Actually, no. Yahusha, yes, but more so Yahuwah. Yahuwah, the covering, their covering, Yahuwah. The cloud represents Yahuwah. How do we know that? Let me explain. When you go to the book of Shamut, as Yahuwah, okay, baby, as Yahuwah prepared to bring them out of Mitzrayim, what did he say? He said that I will be a cloud. Yahuwah said, I will be a cloud to you by day and a fire by night. So the cloud here is Yahuwah. Okay? So we want to make sure we understand that. The cloud here is Yahuwah. All our fathers were under the cloud. The cloud here is Yahuwah. Okay? For I do not wish you to be ignorant, brothers, that all our fathers, that all our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea. Verse 2.